Hi, Sonali, and welcome to What You'd Expect Cast.
Hi, Laura. Love being here. I'm so glad to be back.
I'm so glad to have you back. So, was telling you, you came on the show with Virginia Kendra about 5 years ago. You both were besties, and you just had this awesome author conversation. It was lovely because at the time you guys were from different publishing house, so which is not normal. They will get this pitch, like, "Hey, do you want to have them come on the show?" And you both were like so enamored. Like you had similar books at the time. They were both reimagining retellings of classics, but you were actually so invested in the relationship, and it was like so fun to listen to authors talk to each other and you have this conversation about books and like writing, and it's awesome. So I'll link it to the interview, but I'm so glad to have you back on one-on-one basis now.
Yeah, I'm so glad that, I like being here by myself, but that was so much fun. And funnily enough, Virginia was actually in my home for 3 days this week, and we were celebrating the release of Simi got her Groom back. So she joined me for my launch event at Anderson's and spent 3 days doing what we did here for 1 hour. Like
Yes.
we talked and talked out. So still very much vested and still one of my besties for sure. She's the best.
Yes. Oh, to be a fly on the wall on that weekend. Awesome. So tell us what you've been up to. Getting your new book out, just writing and just surviving, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, those three things. I was on deadline for a good 4 months, and I'm a bit of a I work in bursts.
Yeah.
And this last year was just a little bit full for me. So by the time I started the next book that will come out in 2027,
Yeah.
I was so behind and I hibernated for 4 months. For 4 months, I was gone. For 2 months, for all of 2 months, I didn't leave the house. And I kind of, when I'm doing it, it's hard, but I kind of love that. I love
Yeah.
being able to completely cut myself off. That's just my process because I have so much going on normally. I just can't seem to integrate the two parts of me. So I have to do them separately.
Yeah.
And the release week was wonderful. I had author friends come to stay. We did the author event, and I'm revising that book now and kind of trying to slip back into Simi because this happens to authors. Is that the book that we're releasing is not the book we're writing, and so
Yeah.
our brain is very much in a different space, and then we have to pull it back and kind of go back to those characters. But they're all real people who live in our heads, so
Yes.
it's all good.
Yes, I love it. I think it's hard to kind of like juggle because sometimes the book that you're writing is probably your new child that you're getting to know. And so you're much more familiar with that space, but then you have something that you've already written or something you written like 10 years ago. And you're like, I know this, but sometimes like memory, as we get older, memory starts to fade away. And we're like, oh, they're familiar with us, but we're not as intrinsic as the one that we're currently writing. We're not getting to know the characters every single day.
Yeah, I used to think that I'll remember in startling detail every detail of every book ever and ever. I think until I was at least four, definitely like my first 8 books, I was like that.
Yeah.
Then I think my brain is the characters are still very real to me for all 12 and now 13 books. But then I forget like details of scenes and things like that. But readers will remember. They'll come up to you and be and it comes back really fast. But I couldn't tell you like I would have to think about scene by scene if I would. But the characters, I think, remain very much real people inside me. It's like people we've met, right? It's like people we've met. It's like people we've known and loved. So for sure. And of course, Simi was the last book I wrote, and so Simi and Rupi are difficult to forget. For one,
Yes.
it's like very much.
Well, let's talk about Simi. How Simi got her group back. Group back. We is fake green card, marriage, immigration issues, two sisters, relationship that has its own trauma, its own character arc, and a story that just evolved. Talk to us about the elevator pitch and
Yeah, so it is, I think, at its heart, a story of two sisters. And it really is about what home means, where you're welcome, and why. These lines we draw on earth, and then kind of ways in which we peg people into legal and not legal. That lens, how it dehumanizes I'm not saying I'm a one of the reasons this book was such a growth experience for me and hard to write was that I'm such a rule follower. And but having said that, I think it was one of my greatest growing experiences for that same reason that this lens that we have of legality is different from the lens of wrong and right. And we forget that, right?
Yeah.
And there are so many things today that are legal that weren't before. And that's was the lens of wrong and right and the lens of what the world needs and what of reality is different from which is not to say that law doesn't have its place, but it can't be more absolute than wrong and right. And it can't be dehumanizing, which when it crosses that line. And so these were the things that were kind of what caused that seed of this particular story to grow. But it's really at its heart a story of two sisters who are in trouble, who have not had a great childhood, who've had to struggle to survive, and who are in a position today where they feel pressed against a wall, and the only way that they can survive is by doing something completely hackneyed, as hackneyed as
Yeah.
one of the sisters offering up the love of her life to as the other sister's husband for green card. And of course those themes are not light, and their past is not light, but life is light and dark, right? And
Yeah.
life is light and shadow. And so there's a lot of there's it's basically two women coming into their joy, learning to love life, not just themselves, learning to see a part of life they've never seen because we're not all born. It's a great privilege to be born in a place where you experience joy and where you can escape into humor and all of those things. And this is literally them coming into that.
Yeah, I think it's like it really allows the sisters to come together and to think about it. But I love the theme about what's legal, what's right, what's wrong. And I think in some ways, even because we're talking about immigration is such a hot topic, they're criminalizing, but the reality is a civic matter. It's like a traffic stop. Once upon a time, it was very easy to get a green card, to get immigration. It was like you just sign a paper in Ellis Island and you're like, welcome to America. The law has evolved and has changed, and the core public opinion has changed. And I think in some ways, it's like, how do you make sense when the thing is keeps going higher and higher and you're like, I can't live with this. And at the same time, still have joy because joy is the ultimate act of rebellion. Like still feeling joy despite all the hardships, despite all the things. That's the ultimate act of
I
overcoming.
love
Yeah. So
I love that. That is so true of this book, right? It's for Rupi to have that level of cynical humor.
yeah,
Her humor is the armor for so many of us.
yeah,
And especially today, humor is a coping mechanism for so many of us,
yeah,
right? And it's just like stand-up comedy, I think
yeah,
today is one of the greatest, bravest acts of rebellion. It's
yeah.
not, it's somehow the impact of everything seems to be dulling. There was a
Re-
time when I think because of how much we're bombarded with in terms of information,
Yeah,
we've all gotten it's like living in the tundra. Your body
yeah,
stops feeling cold, and it's like living in on the equator, and your body stops feeling heat the same way. It's for things that should be devastating to us. And but how much can you be devastated? It's exactly like how cold can you be and how hot can you be? How devastated can you be? And so when continuously we're being bombarded with devastation, we're developing scabs in places I think we shouldn't. And I think one piece of storytelling is kind of to poke a little bit at that. And everybody deserves joy. And to do it, I think where it is both in as real to me, my thing is I want these completely unlivable, these things nobody wants to experience, put into experiences that we safe experiences that we can, right?
yeah,
So that's the only way our empathy muscle gets worked out, where we get to walk in someone's shoes
yeah,
safely. And hopefully that does something for us in real life when we come across people who, well, for me, it's that the individualness of it is gone. Like we label across the board. It's these people and those people, and even everything is a label. Are you liberal? Are you conservative? Are you left? Are you right? Are you mentally healthy? Are you not? Are you like it all? behind all these, are you legal? Are you illegal? Behind all this is real people with real
Yeah.
stories, and a label can't replace that. And I think some of all my storytelling is right for ourselves, because as much as we do it to other people, we do it to ourselves. X, I'm X, but I have infinite potential, right? X, I'm so much more than X, and you're so much more than Y. And I think when we can't, the first step is to be able to see ourselves, and then to be able to see the world with that same kindness and generosity. So I really hope, yeah. I mean, this is
Well,
that's I hope for the world.
yeah, and I think in some ways that's when books are so healing because they teach empathy, but they also teach you like opportunities. Like I grew up in a lot of trauma and just a lot of it. And I realized I found comfort in books because books were kind of like the soothing balm that just got me through. It got me through while I was going through the trauma and also got me through outside of it and taught me what healthy relationship looks like, what it actually means to have joy, what it means to look for different experiences, what it means to have to build a healthy relationship with your parents, like actually like teaching your parents how to care for you. It is something you have to to work on it. And books were kind of like the place where we learn how to foster those relationships. And I think authors like you who are writing those tough subjects, but they're writing with a sense of hope and a sense of like healing. That's where we look at romance. And romance is not just prescriptive. It's just it's a place where you can actually do the emotional work and then realize everything's gonna be okay.
Absolutely. I think anybody who says romance novels are aspirational in terms of expectations from a relationship, it makes me really sad. It should not be aspirational to
Yeah.
expect to be seen and to be treated well and to be pleasured and to be understood and to have to fight within a relationship for it, but fighting right, where you can actually change each other because it's the right thing to do, right? Not
Yeah.
just peacekeeping all the time, but those kind of real nuances. But to think that being attracted to, being understood by, being cared for, caring for, to think any of this is aspirational, literally giving a pass to people to be jerks. And it just it breaks my heart anytime someone says that. I mean, I had three of my author friends in my home, and four of us spent, my husband's traveling, my kids kind of come and go because they're grown, but the four of us, we this is what we talk about. I mean, we talk a lot about books and we talk a lot about publishing and all of that and our characters, but we talk about our real lives. And I'll tell you that these are nobody is they have the kind of relationships and the kind of men who we do right.
Yeah.
But does that mean they're perfect or have six pack abs? Maybe they did when they were 20. We would That's not what romance is about, right?
Yeah.
That's metaphorical and that's fun, but the real person behind the six
Yeah.
pack and the real human behind the one who's crossed his arms and is leaning on a
Yeah.
on a door frame. That's what these books are about. And anyone who doesn't understand that has their own journey.
Yeah, I think in some ways, unfortunately, the bar was so low for a long time, and a lot of things that we now no longer find acceptable. Like I was in threads, and they're like men are like, of course, they're like asking for a mom. They're asking for, oh, we're gonna be so angry at the end. We're gonna feel so devastated that we didn't find a man. And I was like, but my life is actually I chose to, my bar is high, and if I choose to spend time with someone, I want it to be equally acceptable. And I am happy with my life. I have a conditional love. I have like friendships, deep friendships, hobbies. I have things that I get to do. I have a freedom to choose, and I don't have to raise a child because that's what they're expecting. Some men are expecting. And I was like, no. And I think Romans gave me permission to be like, no, this is not acceptable.
You know, romance is really, I think, about falling in love with yourself.
Yes.
Because I believe that letting love into your life, whether it is friends, love is love. Whether it is a significant other or a friend or a community, or freaking aunt or an uncle or a parental figure, whatever. And that love can if it comes into your life, you can only feel it when you have made the journey to thinking of yourself as worthy, and you are worthy, and yet we have to struggle so hard to get there, right? And so it really is a journey toward falling in love with yourself. And by that, I mean accepting yourself for who you are, giving thought to what makes you happy, giving thought to who you are, right? How you want to live your life, which is all the things you just said. It's this is how I want to live my life. And if X thing does not fit into that, then there is no, because that's what the patriarchy does, right? It puts everything in this neat little box. So it works for everyone. And by everyone, it is people in power who are generally and often powerful and privileged men, and also powerful and privileged women who have been used as mouthpieces or whatever, right? So the thing is that, yeah, no, I mean, children or marriage or all of these things own is things for people who want them. And but loving yourself is a thing for everyone.
Yes, I think it's like active loving yourself, active like just it's just choosing joy. Again, we just go back to that place of what will bring us joy right now in this moment. It doesn't have to be this big transformation or this big curriculum or and thing. It just means what choice can I make that will bring me joy at this moment. And moment by moment you start to find your power and you find your like your voice in many ways of like setting standards or setting boundaries or setting things that work for you and be a role model to others as an add-on, not as a purpose but as an add-on. You're a role model to others, so how do you want to be?
Yeah, and one piece of that is not having to hide, right?
No.
So much, again, keeping structures is about hiding. If I am, if, whatever I'm struggling with and whatever I'm joyous for, both those things, I should. It is an act of bravery to share that with the world, because all we've been taught from childhood is in how that can be taken away if you put it out there, or how that can get people to shut you down. Now, like, it's so much, this stuff is scary, right? You put it out, what will be misunderstood that I speak, what will get people to swoop down on me, all of that. But to out in the open show your true self is an act of bravery, right? Because there's a million people interpreting that in any which way, and you're human. You're not always what's inside your head, what comes out of your mouth, all of that. So it's an, I mean, today, because of the spotlight, it's just an act of bravery, I think, just to exist and to continue to show yourself. And it's but the more you hide and the more you're unable to be who you are, the less people, because we all, in the end, you could say something to me and you could do something, and I'd be like, wow, I wish I could do that. And if she can, why can't I?
Yeah.
Right. And as women, specifically, I think things like just doing stuff for ourselves or being ambitious, or all of that is put in a scale against what kind of mom you are, what kind of daughter, what kind of wife. So much of it is, even today I see, will see women publicly saying, sure, I'm ambitious, but my children come first. I mean, those two things do not need to, it is all the time, whatever it is, it's how we've been trained. But I hear women say this all the time, and I'm like, but my love for my children and my love for my work,
Yeah.
I mean, why do those two things have to always be mentioned in the same breath, right?
Yes.
Because we're told that we have to pay a price, right? So
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's just it we're just fighting the patriarchy one day. That's really comes down to it. And I'm so grateful for authors like you who are sharing stories that helps us fight the patriarchy. It's not an easy work. It's not easy work of like internal work to do that, but you're setting an example in helping others to do the same thing.
I mean, it takes all of us, I think. And it's getting harder because now a resistance again has been developed towards it, right? You say that word and a lot of people's brain just shuts down. And a lot of men's brains shut down, but the patriarchy harms men just as much,
Yeah.
right? Also harms men. I don't know if it's just as much, but for the ones who don't want to conform, it harms just as much. Like, this whole thing is about being yourself and not conforming to preset ideas. So hopefully, that, to me, that's what drives the stories.
Yes, it does. All right, let's talk about some books. What type of books do you tend to read? I know you read a lot. You read, or sometimes, based on writing may not be as much as it used to, but what books? What genres?
So I read across genres a lot. I do relationships and love and set person and personal journey as long as there's that. So even when no matter what book I'm reading, I'm always zeroing in on the love piece of it or on the romance piece of it, on the relationships piece of it. So that basically is kind of what I'm reading for. And I really enjoy good writing.
Yes.
So clever, lyrical. If I want to read a book that is going to make me laugh, make me cry, and change something inside me. Let me see something, one fresh thing, right? That's
Yeah.
my, if I've read a book like that where I've had to put the book down and laugh out loud, sob, and then, wow, I never thought of this way. If a book can do those three things, that's the book I'm looking for. So it really does not matter other than that. But of course, for relaxation, for believing in the world again, romance is my favorite genre. But again, romance that makes me laugh, try, believe in the world and learn something new. So those are the kind of books. So obviously the books that I want to write
Yeah.
are the books I love to. But more important, I think, than anything else is
Yes, I love the fact because just give you hope and stuff. I think I read across genre, and I didn't think I was because for a long time I only read romance, and then I was like, oh, I got a little too tired, and I was like, sometimes I was like, I want the husband to do something that's not supposed to. And so I started reading thrillers and horror and mysteries and stuff, and it gave me a sense of like how it's important to read genre, even nonfiction, and finding different things that I got to learn about myself. It's allowing yourself to world expand and have the comfort of what kind of endings you appreciate. I appreciate a tidy up ending, so that's why romance works really well. But books like yours worked really well. Like it allows me the ending to feel hope at the end of
exactly right. That for sure. That for sure. I understand real life and stuff, but I think to say that real life is essentially brutal and unhopeful, why are we all living there? We all live because we're hopeful. So real life
yeah.
is more hopeful than hopeless, I think. But I was saying even more, if I'm thinking of genre, then romance would be my genre. I'm saying books themselves that so
Yeah.
it's not so much that horror and mystery, but it's within a book
Yeah.
that it all the things
Yeah.
that there is so pot boilers almost, but literary pot boilers, if there is such a
Yeah.
thing, would be my favorite, where the story is happening
Yes.
and the rest of it does not matter and the characters matter. It's not a dead body. I understand the familiarity of genre where you expect a certain thing and you get that. So in that way, genre that would romance would be my choice
Yeah.
always. I'm not a fan of seeing a dead body on page one and then kind of suspecting everyone and everything until the end. It just doesn't go with my personality. But a dead body is part of someone's life. You may or may not
Yeah.
find out what happened, but you learn something else along the way. That's what I'm talking about more.
Yes. I love cozy mysteries. Cozy mysteries, they don't even show the dad. It's on the side. You just hang out with the friends. You're like, you have a cute little love triangle, and you're just trying like the lover romance. And it's like, oh, this is great. There's something like that. There's like time in the city.
Thriller good. I'm like, because just as much as hope and love and fighting for relationships is important, I think digging into why darkness exists, why so much darkness exists within so many people, it really fascinates me.
Yeah.
And so I think as much as I love the humor and the angst, I think digging into the darkness of the human spirit is also something. So I
Yeah.
think thriller, I would say it would be my second favorite
Yeah.
genre. Maybe
I love this. All right, let's start some book recommendations. You had a few books to recommend our listeners to pick up. I do have the first one is Leila Attar, Caste and the Stars, I think it is.
the
Yes,
stars.
the star.
But it's not spelled with an E. And it's a delightful romance. It's set in Canada and they both come home and she has just gotten divorced. And it said, I love the homecoming stories where you go home to heal. And so she's home to heal from having been divorced, her business that she worked so hard to build being taken away from her as part of the divorce because her husband and she own the business together. And then she comes home and her parents run a funeral home, and it's an Indian Hindu funeral home, and called Moksha. And it is, and so she's back there. They live on their home is part of, so it's one of those. They live on the campus of the funeral home, and she has, it's the loveliest family, because this is a family who believes it is their spiritual duty to help people let go of lost ones, of letting the spirit go, and all of that, which is why the cast is spelled with an E. It is actually written by. So I think as an Indian author writing romance or writing genre fiction and commercial fiction, I'm hungry to read authentic stories by authors who are not from privileged castes, right? It is incredibly important, I think, to hear those voices. And because it helps in your everything else you've been seeing through lenses of people from, especially if you come from a privileged place, then all you've seen is lenses of privilege, right? And until the person who has walked the walk and lived the struggle speaks, you don't learn anything true. And I think this book is that, is this, and what, and it's also, I read books with Indian protagonists, and for me, it's the story. They just happen to be Indian. And which means you don't, which is not the same as saying, I'm colorblind in ethnicity, right? It's
Yeah.
just saying, that's not the whole point of my existence. And Leila does that with this book. She doesn't shy away. She keeps that as in the narrative, but that's not what the book is about.
Yeah.
And the book is really about her coming home and her childhood love, who has gone on to become a huge Hollywood star, who lives next door. Him being there to shoot a movie, and he actually is. The movie involves him being living in a funeral home, and so he needs to come and kind of. So he needs her and her family for research, and so they're back in each other's life. And there were reasons why things didn't work out with them before, and it's a second chance at first love, which is one of my favorite tropes. It's the whole family drama. It's the whole learning to believe that what society has told you about you is not true. It's delightful and hot. Just lovely.
I just love it. And we got to talk about partners in crime about Lisha Ray.
Ali,
Uh,
actually, Alicia could just write anything.
yeah.
Alicia could write. I mean, to be cliched, I would read her grocery lists. I can just even
Yeah.
imagine what's the grocery lists are. And I'll tell you why. I think there are few authors who, for me, are able to do a certain level of vulnerability with their
Yeah.
characters, right? Where the characters are real people, where somehow you are slipping into their emotions, and in a very visceral way. And Alicia is able to do that, I think, and so I love it. And especially things like angst and chemistry, she does so beautifully. And this is a full rom, where another second chance, yeah, romance, but it also is this kind of heisty vibe where they are, where she's from a family of, and also again, Indian perspective. We're not a monolith, right? So
Yeah.
all of these perspectives, we usually tend to have characters who have these cute, big, happy, boundaryless, but kind of caring families. And in Partners in Crime, she is, her dad has been a con man. It's a whole different kind of thing to be raised in. And so she has a lot of that in her. And there's a fantastic poker game. So they go to Vegas. There's gangsters involved. She's trying to, so she's been kidnapped, and her ex, or not a full blown ex, but a guy she was set up with and really liked by a matchmaker, is the hero. Such a fabulous, and she writes the best heroes. But so they kind of are running for their lives, trying to steal something. It's a romp across Vegas, and just them finding each other and finding themselves. And it's fast, and it is angsty, and it's funny, and it's breathless. I love it. Loved it.
Yeah, I agree. I can read anything from Alicia Ray. She can run the grocery store. Actually, she had a series that was loosely based on Wegmans, the grocery store in upstate New York. That series, you're like, first of all, Wegmans. I lived in upstate New York in my early time. I was in the mainland, and it is a great grocery store. Great. Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely. Each one of those books I loved. I also
Yes.
loved the
Just
original.
swipe by the social media influencers one. This was great.
Those are great. Even like Serving Pleasure from way back,
Yes.
which really hurt.
Yes.
I think kind of is erotic contemporary romance. One of my favorite books. It's because it has that thing. It has that kind of the angst is so real. You kind of it's visceral. You feel it, and all of them, the whole swipe right, and those even have really clever names,
Yes.
titles. And then, of course, I love the family series.
Yes.
That complication of characters coming back and everything. So I loved the like series also. She also did While You Were Sleeping retelling in YA,
Oh,
which is
yes.
wonderful.
I need to add this.
Yes. And it is While You Were Something. I
I look
should have
for
known.
it.
But yeah, it's my favorite rom-com movie.
Yeah.
And so it's really lovely to see that in her hands also. She does have a book coming out in April.
Yeah. I think it's Enemies and Lovers. I think it is.
And
It's like a trope. It's like it's fine. Remember. So,
Partners in Crime.
yeah.
I'm at sonalidev.com. That has everything. Everywhere you can find me on social media. I think most authentically myself on Instagram. I am much less on social media than I used to be, but Instagram is the place where it's real and it's me. I'm also on Facebook. I do have a Facebook group, but I do less. I might at some point do more, but I also have a newsletter very much which is very low. I should send it out much more. I've sent one out this year because I had a release, which is so I'm a little lazy about my newsletter, but usually it comes out about once a month. It's the 3 hours. So it is a recipe, a recommendation, and a really bad joke from my family group chat. And it's just stream of consciousness, what I'm feeling at that point, just where to meet me, what's going on with the books, that sort of thing.
I love this. Sonali, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Laura. This is always such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the What to Read Next. For more book lists, cozy reads, and library tips, visit the whattoreadnextblog.com. Your next great read might be waiting there.